You hear the sudden, deafening crack of a gunshot tearing through the cool afternoon air. People all around you immediately begin to scream in absolute chaotic panic. Instinct, that ancient lizard brain survival mechanism, takes complete control of your limbs. You run and you dive behind the nearest heavy metal of a parked car for cover, scraping your palms raw on the asphalt. As you sit there, breathing heavily, frantically trying to get your bearings in the rising chaos, you look down. A dark, warm pool of blood is slowly starting to soak right through the fabric of your favorite shirt. You've been hit. So, how does getting shot actually feel in the real world, away from the movie screens? Welcome to Night Question. We've all seen the Hollywood version of this scene 1,000 times. The hero takes a lead slug to the shoulder, grunts for a second, and keeps on fighting. But today, we're diving into the massive, terrifying gap between cinematic expectations and the harsh biological reality of ballistics. When you sit down with actual survivors and ask them what that exact life-altering moment felt like, you start to notice some mind-blowing commonalities. The specific sensations are strictly dictated by the exact location of the wound, the caliber and velocity of the bullet, and the unique neurological wiring of the person standing in the line of fire. Let's look at the incredible accounts of those who lived to tell the tale and break down the science of the strike. Here is the crazy part that shatters almost every civilian expectation. Many gunshot survivors clearly remember the precise split-second moment the bullet penetrated their body. But the strange thing is, they usually don't remember feeling any actual pain at first. You would naturally assume that a searing hot chunk of copper and lead, traveling at over 1,500 feet per second, violently ripping through your epidermis and severing complex nerve endings, would be instantly, agonizingly excruciating. However, the biological reality is that survivors often don't even notice they have been shot until they actually look down and see the crimson flow. One particular survivor remembers the direct impact of the bullet, feeling merely like someone had playfully thrown a small blunt pebble at her side. She felt absolutely no initial pain, only a confusing sense of pressure. Why does this happen? It's your brain acting as your ultimate built-in biological bodyguard. Once your central nervous system realizes the body has suffered massive, potentially terminal trauma, it immediately flips an internal switch and enters a state of extreme survival mode. The brain dumps a massive, overwhelming payload of pure adrenaline and endorphins directly into your bloodstream. This chemical cocktail is an evolutionary masterpiece. It forces your heart rate to the red line limit, expands the air passages deep in your lungs, and temporarily numbs the pain receptors to allow you to escape the threat. The lack of initial pain is also heavily connected to the complex physics and size of the bullet. A smaller bullet, like a standard 9mm round that manages to pass cleanly through the soft tissue without breaking apart, will cause significantly less immediate agony than a large caliber round that forcefully fragments into jagged shrapnel. When these high-velocity bullets break apart, they create what ballistics experts call a temporary cavity. This is a shockwave that ruthlessly ripples through surrounding healthy tissue and muscle far beyond the initial entry point, creating massive structural damage and sending frantic, high-frequency distress signals to the brain. But what happens when that initial magical adrenaline shock finally starts to wear off and your body drops out of survival mode? This is the terrifying turning point. Many victims vividly remember the protective numbness fading into a highly specific, intense burning sensation. This particular feeling is practically universal among those who survive. Some describe the onset of this burning as feeling like receiving a profoundly intense, deep bee sting from a giant radioactive insect. However, unlike a normal sting, this burning doesn't fade. It aggressively intensifies every single second. It feels exactly like being stung by an angry hornet equipped with a never-ending stinger, like a thick, white-hot needle is being continuously pushed deeper and deeper into your raw flesh. When the spinning bullet actually penetrates the skin, the person feels a heavy, blunt impact, followed by a strange, cold numbness sweeping across their limbs, radiating directly outward from the entry point. As that chemical numbness fades, it is ruthlessly replaced by the raging fire of the burning sensation. Some traumatized people have described this deep burning as being impossibly, almost supernaturally hot. They describe it as if someone was gripping an iron poker that had literally just been pulled out of a roaring campfire and was actively shoving it deep into their open, pulsing wound. The heat is so concentrated that it feels like your internal temperature has spiked to 200 degrees in that one specific square inch of your body. This specific radiating pain is caused by shattered nerve clusters that have been partially severed or crushed, sending a chaotic storm of electrical noise to the somatosensory cortex. Again, every person's physical body is entirely different. For example, military soldiers who have unfortunately been shot on the battlefield have frequently recounted a vastly different, far more brutal experience. Most combat veterans agree that the initial period of no pain is much shorter in a war zone. Instead of a slow, creeping, burning sensation, the catastrophic bullet wound from a rifle rapidly transitions from a feeling of slight pressure to a state of blinding, excruciating agony. The scientific reason is simple. Soldiers are typically hit by high-velocity rifle rounds, like the 5.56 or 7.62 millimeter, which travel at nearly 3,000 feet per second. These rounds carry an incredible amount of kinetic energy, thousands of foot-pounds of force that essentially explodes inside the body upon impact. One brave soldier explicitly says that the initial shock wore off after just a few agonizing seconds of a heavy rifle bullet violently entering his stomach. He vividly remembers the sensation, feeling exactly like being struck directly in the gut by a massive, swinging steel sledgehammer over and over again, with no pause. He described a feeling of total internal collapse, as if his entire digestive system had been turned into liquid. Eventually, a warm, heavy numbness flowed through his weary body, and thankfully, his brain essentially pulled the plug and he blacked out. On the opposite end of the biological spectrum, some incredibly lucky people say there was actually no pain at all from the moment of impact until they reached the operating table. One man, shot directly in the calf muscle by a small .22 caliber bullet, explicitly stated that it simply didn't hurt. He safely chalks this up to the bullet being very small and low velocity and striking a safe area with absolutely no vital organs or major bone structures. But what about the absolute worst case scenario? What about being shot directly in the head? You may be incredibly surprised to find out that surviving a direct gunshot wound to the skull is not as statistically uncommon as you might think. Take the wild, almost unbelievable story of one man who was accidentally shot in the head by his own wife while he was peacefully sleeping in his bed. When the confused man finally awoke, he didn't even know he had been shot in the face. Instead, he simply complained to his anxious wife of having a truly massive, unbearable migraine headache, the kind that feels like your brain is trying to expand beyond the limits of your skull. It wasn't until the attending ER nurse took an X-ray and informed him that he had a literal lead bullet lodged directly in his brain tissue that he finally realized what had actually happened. There are a few specific commonalities between the lucky survivors of headshots. The first is that intense, throbbing headache caused by the massive spike in intracranial pressure as the brain begins to swell in response to the intrusion. The other fascinating commonality is a highly specific, deafening ringing sound known as catastrophic tinnitus. Survivors describe this metallic ringing as a bizarre sound unlike anything they've ever heard, completely drowning out all other ambient noise, making it impossible to hear the voices of the people trying to help them. Some compare it to a loud, constant buzzing, exactly like having a swarm of angry, vibrating bees trapped deep inside your ear canals. There also seems to be an initial, incredibly sharp metallic ping sound, like a hammer hitting an anvil, caused by the bullet aggressively striking the dense bone of the skull. But here is the ultimate twist in the story of survival. Most gunshot survivors will look you dead in the eye and tell you that the absolute most painful part isn't the bullet itself. It is the brutal, agonizing recovery process that follows. The invasive operation required to dig through sensitive tissue, clean out lead fragments, and successfully remove the bullet is deeply, fundamentally excruciating. Many openly admit that the exhausting physical rehab process, which can last for years, is infinitely worse than the actual terrifying event of getting shot. One survivor had to endure 7 different surgeries over 12 months just to physically recover her ability to walk. Her body naturally rejected the metal fragments, pushing the jagged bullet right up close to the surface of her skin over several weeks, creating a constant, sharp pain until a surgeon finally cut it out. And yet, the physical pain, the burning, the sledgehammer hits, the surgeries isn't even the absolute worst part. It's the deep, invisible psychological trauma that silently haunts them for the rest of their lives. The vast majority of survivors end up battling severe post-traumatic stress disorder. Their brains become hypervigilant, constantly scanning for threats, turning every car backfire or slamming door into a potential assassination attempt. Getting shot is an incredibly violent intrusion into the human body and the human soul. Whether it starts as a blunt, burning sensation or leaves you battling the dark shadows of psychological trauma, it is a truly life-altering event. The sad truth is, while the wounds may close, many people never fully recover from the day the lead met the bone. If you found this deep dive into the limits of human endurance fascinating, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more stories that explore the questions we usually only ask in the dark. Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight on Night Question, and I'll catch you in the next one.